As a rebel leader meets the Syrian Prime Minister to discuss the political transition in the country, cabinet ministers are reportedly getting back to work. Ukrainian forces are producing leaflets and videos encouraging North Korean soldiers to desert.
European Commission President is trying hard to get the Mercosur free trade deal done. However, Emmanuel Macron is determined to block it. The European Parliament will have the last word.
The NYPD arrested a man in connection with the killing of United Healthcare CEO, reportedly recovering a note expressing his motivation against corporate America. Syria's Prime Minister said that most cabinet ministers were back to work after rebels overthrew President Bashar Assad. However, a UN official said the country's public sector had come to a complete and abrupt halt, with some state workers reportedly failing to return to their jobs. Syrian rebels announced that rebel leader Ahmed al-Shara met in Damascus with the outgoing prime minister who chaired Assad's government. Talks focused on the political transition in the country, according to the rebel coalition. The UK and US are both reportedly considering whether to remove the main anti-Assad rebel groups from their list of designated terrorist organizations. Meanwhile, streams of refugees crossed back into Syria from neighboring countries, hoping for a more peaceful future. Across swathes of Syria, families are now waiting outside prisons, security offices and courts, hoping for news of loved ones who were imprisoned or who disappeared during Assad's rule.
The European Union is currently not in direct contact with Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, but is willing to revise its position as a transition of power in Syria moves forward. The group was blacklisted for terrorism by the United Nations in 2014, but Western allies are now forced to rethink their stance.
Now more than ever, it is imperative that all stakeholders engage in an inclusive, Syrian-led and Syrian-owned dialogue on all key issues to ensure an orderly, peaceful and inclusive transition guided by the respect for international law, human rights, fundamental freedoms, pluralism and tolerance among all components of society.
It is not yet clear what changes will be made to the European Union's long-standing policy on Syria, such as on its sanctions. Next week, foreign affairs ministers from the bloc are scheduled to meet for an initial debate with Vice President of the European Commission, Kaja Kallas.
Syria has been devastated by a bloody civil war since 2011, which has its roots in a failed uprising against Bashar al-Assad during the Arab Spring. While many of the region's rulers either stepped down or were forcibly removed, Assad hung on. He directed the military to launch a brutal crackdown on the unrest, with an estimated 3,500 protesters killed. After months of violence, armed rebel groups began forming across the country, and what started as an insurgency had, by 2012, escalated into full-blown civil war. The UN Refugee Agency says that more than 14 million Syrians have been forced to flee their homes. More than 7 million of those remain internally displaced. The rest have fled abroad. While many settled in the countries closest to Syria, others sought asylum in Europe, and the news of Assad's downfall has been met with a mixture of disbelief and joy.
On n'arrive pas même à croire, parce que c'était un rêve, vraiment un rêve qu'on attendait depuis très longtemps. 60 ans de la humiliation, de dictature, là on est libre, on n'arrive pas à croire. Et même parfois, j'arrive pas, j'ai peur de dormir pour se lever, c'est un rêve.
C'est notre pays, c'est notre territoire, c'est là où on a vécu, c'est là où on a grandi, c'est là où on veut vraiment vivre notre vie tranquillement sans avoir aucun problème.
Ça fait 14 ans qu'on attend la liberté, qu'on demande la liberté et maintenant c'est enfin on l'a obtenu et on est très content d'être ici. En fait, nous on veut que la paix.
Es ist eine Revelation, es ist kein Bürgerkrieg in Syrien. Bitte, die Medien in Österreich sagen, das ist ein Bürgerkrieg in Syrien. Es ist kein Bürgerkrieg. Es ist Revelation und jetzt ist endlich fertig. Assad-regime ist fertig, ist vorbei.
Super blij, echt. En super trots ook. Dus ja.
Waar ben je zo trots op?
dat eindelijk Syrië is vrij.
We zijn allemaal optimistisch. We zijn allemaal Syriër en we gaan samen Syrië opbouwen.
Natürlich, wir werden nicht vergessen, dass Deutschland uns geholfen hat, viel gegeben. Ich selber, ich habe studiert Medizintechnik, mein Studium abgeschlossen. Ich habe die Staatsbürgerschaft und ich werde auch nach Syrien zurückkehren, um mein Land wieder aufzubauen.
Ukrainian military forces are producing leaflets and videos encouraging North Korean soldiers to desert. Kyiv's intelligence began their work after news broke that thousands of North Korean troops joined Moscow's forces in the Kursk border region. The project originally was aimed at Russian soldiers who didn't want to participate in the war, but its scope has since expanded.
І ми всі чудово знаємо, які умови життя в Північній Кореї, тому багато людей задумаються, це може бути шанс втікти від режиму і, в принципі, втікти там в іншу країну. Вона тут російської мови.
Leaflets show North Korean forces how to surrender as well as what conditions are like on the other side. These leaflets are dispersed either by drone or through projectiles.
The Netherlands began implementing renewed additional border controls on Monday. The tightened border checks are set to last 6 months across roads, railways, and a select number of flights. The measures were proposed by the right-wing coalition led by the well-known anti-Muslim nationalist PVV party of Geert Wilders. Despite criticism, the Dutch Minister of Asylum and Migration said the move is not just symbolic and expects it will succeed in bringing down the influx of illegal migrants.
Er zijn altijd mensen die hebben altijd een reden om iets niet te doen. Maar ik laat me er niet van weerhouden. Wij nemen deze maatregelen, want ik wil dat die instroom naar beneden gaat. En dit is een van de maatregelen om dat te gaan bewerkstelligen.
The Dutch military police carrying out the checks said most people will not notice a huge difference at borders. While they are now technically able to carry out checks at all border crossing points, this is unlikely to happen, as they must operate at the same capacity as before.
Journalists have joined the protest in Georgia to denounce what they call an increase in violence against the media during the coverage of ongoing mass rallies in the country. Several hundred media workers on Sunday marched down Tbilisi's central Rustaveli Avenue, holding posters and pictures of their colleagues they say had been assaulted. The demonstration comes as tens of thousands of Georgians continue their protest against the ruling party.
It is the 11th day of protests in Georgia. Over the weekend, the unknown masked thugs attacked a journalist and a cameraman during a live broadcast. The following day, the journalists protested the attacks on more than 50 journalists who were severely injured while performing their journalistic duties. The media representatives marched to the Parliament building of Georgia, where the Christmas tree had been placed earlier that morning. The journalists attached the protest posters and the photos of the injured journalists to the Christmas tree, transforming it to the protest tree.
The ceremony to reopen Notre Dame Cathedral brought world leaders and some big names to Paris last Saturday. It was almost an unofficial summit where bilateral and even trilateral meetings were held. However, one important figure was missing. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, was conspicuously absent from the prestigious occasion. She had been in Uruguay the day before to conclude a political free trade agreement with the South American countries of Mercosur, a text rejected by the French president. For some, von der Leyen is openly challenging Paris. For others, it was simply a scheduling problem that prevented her trip.
There were scheduling issues. I have no information on the exact what was exactly the scheduling issues, but that was the reason indeed. And as said, we had not yet formally confirmed the participation of the president.
Ursula von der Leyen is criticized for announcing her trip to Montevideo at the last minute. But above all, this agreement comes at a time of political crisis in France, as the country is currently without a fully fledged government. However, the French president's representatives in Brussels show that Emmanuel Macron still intends to prevent the text from being ratified.
we have concrete issue that we raised a long time ago. So we continue to work on this and to show that with to really see that if the Commission move forward on all this area or not. So in fact, now, like I said, it's a new step. The President Macron, but also French minister, will work on the council level, and me, I continue my job in the European Parliament.
The political battle is far from over. The agreement must be ratified by the member states. France is therefore trying to muster a blocking minority. If the capitals fail, Paris will have another opportunity to derail the text, since the parliament also has to vote.
New York's police commissioner said the NYPD arrested a 26-year-old with weapon consistent with the gun used in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Thompson died in a dawn ambush on Wednesday as he walked to the company's annual investor conference from his hotel across the street. NYPD Chief of Detectives Joseph Kenny said Luigi Nicholas Mangione was taken into custody on Monday. He was arrested after police received a tip that he had been spotted at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania. Authorities reportedly recovered a handwritten document speaking to both his motivation and mindset. NYPD officials said the document indicated ill will towards corporate America rather than specific threats. The arrest appears to bring an end to a sprawling manhunt that expanded across the US.